All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us this evening, wherever you are joining us from. Thank you so much. But we want to give you a few updates. We made a number of changes to our national convention, also to the Delegate Assembly because of so much uncertainty with the ongoing pandemic that we're experiencing in this country. And so we just want to spend a little bit of time with you. I know many people have questions about what's going on. We have a lot of things that are in process as we lead up to our national convention, which will be taking place July 6th through 10, 2021. And so just want to introduce the people that are with us today, in case you aren't familiar with our denominational staff. We have Iris DeLeon Hartshorn. She's our Associate Executive Director for Operations. Iris, wave to the people so they can see who you are. Also, we have Michael Danner. Michael Danner is another Associate Executive Director in our Church Vitality Department. And we also have Scott Hartman, our Director of Events for Mennonite Church USA. And helping us with interpretation, we have Julia Danner. And so she will be helping us today, and I'll speak a little bit slower so she doesn't have to try to keep up with my Texas accent. And so if you do need interpretation, click the link at the bottom of your screen. And so we will have Spanish translation for you today. And so we want to go over a few topics with you today, give you a little bit of an update about what's going on with the Delegate Assembly, the resolution process, talk a little bit about the things that will happen at the Delegate Assembly, and of course, give you some updates related to the National Convention. And so one of the first things we'll start off with is the Delegate Assembly. We have decided to have a virtual Delegate Assembly for 2021. The reason for this is, again, because of the uncertainty connected to the COVID protocols. And if you're familiar with the Delegate Assembly, we normally meet around round tables in one room. And that just would be extremely difficult for us to do based on the current social distancing guidelines. And so the executive board felt like it would be more appropriate for this year to meet virtually. And so the Delegate Assembly is scheduled to take place on July 10th. That's the Saturday at the end of convention from 1 o'clock to 3:30 p.m. Eastern time, Cincinnati time. So some of the questions that we've gotten with that, well, if I come to the in-person convention, will there be a room set up for that? There may be a room set up for that. We are still working with the city on specifics. I'm sorry we can't nail things down for you, but even if we do have space allocated, which we are attempting to do, you will still need your own device in order to participate, because many of our participants for the Delegate Assembly will be joining us virtually. We will continue our resolutions process as normal, even though for the 2.5 hour session we're going to have on July 10th, we will not be dealing with the church statement resolutions that are in process. We'll talk a little bit about the membership guidelines resolution in a little bit. But we will continue with our normal process. So if you go to our website and look up the process for developing resolutions for Mennonite Church USA, we will continue with that process. Any resolutions that are in the hopper right now will be going to CLC. The CLC, I believe, meets in March. They will continue to go through the process, and then the executive board meets in April. We also have the resolutions committee, which is continuing its work. So we aren't deviating from our process, other than we don't have a specific date when we will take up those church statement resolutions, but we hope to do it sometime in 2022, depending on the status of the global pandemic that we are experiencing. And so, we are doing everything to follow COVID protocols, working with the cities, listening to health professionals, and also city officials in Cincinnati to make sure that we are doing things the right way. One question we did have, Scott will talk a little bit more about convention, is how likely is it that convention might be canceled or go entirely virtual? Right now, we still have hope that we will be able to have our hybrid convention. We do anticipate lower numbers than we would normally have at our convention, but we do still hope that things continue to progress in our country so that we can have the hybrid convention, not delegate assembly. Well, one of the things that we will talk about in the delegate assembly, the virtual delegate assembly, is bylaw changes and also continuing the leadership discernment process where that deals with our board appointments, people that will serve in our church. And so I'm going to ask Iris to tell us a little bit about the process for LDC, which is an important part of our structure here in Mennonite Church USA.
Okay, I'm one of the staff for the Leadership Discernment Committee. This is a committee that is nominated by the executive board. And our job is to prepare slates of nominees and appointments for the executive board for church-wide program agencies and the executive board. Our committee can consist up to 8 people, but right now it's to 6 because when we left the Mennonite, that left less work for the committee, and some of the boards are getting smaller, so we don't need to appoint as many people for boards.
And Iris, and just so we can clarify, so the Mennonite is no longer a church-wide entity.
Agency. Right.
So
the Leadership Discernment Committee does not appoint or nominate board members for them anymore. Okay. So the LDC brings before everyone all the nominations, and it gets a little confusing because, like the executive board, there's board appointments. People that are appointed are not elected, but at the delegate session, their names are shared for your information so that you know they're appointed to boards. And then basically the other half are nominated through the LDC process, and those we bring and are actually elected by the delegates body. So when you get to the delegate assembly, you will get a ballot with each person on it, their name and a little bio about them. And then we vote to either affirm them, or if there's anyone wants to say anything, they can at that time. We develop all these names. We ask the CLC for names. We also, if you go on our website, you can also submit names for people that you think would serve our boards well. And we really would appreciate as many names, because the more names we get, better boards we can have, because we will have a lot more people to select from. So again, at the delegate assembly, the slate of names that come for election actually have to be voted on by the delegate body.
All right. Thank you, Iris. And remember, if you have any questions for our panelists, you can type those in the question and answer box, and we will try to get it to as many questions as we can during this time. Well, next we're going to have Michael Danner talk to you a little bit about the membership guidelines process. You know, the executive board has been gathering feedback about the membership guidelines. Michael's going to just tell you a little bit about that process and where we are now, specifically with the executive board work in regards to the membership guidelines.
Thanks, Glenn. Yeah, my name is Michael Danner. I'm Associate Executive Director for Church Vitality. Been doing this work since, I think, mid to late 2018. So Glenn asked me to give kind of a 30,000 foot view or recap of how we got to where we're at currently with the executive board resolution on the membership guidelines. In some sense, we've been talking about about the membership guidelines for a while, going back to 1999, 2001, but we're not going to start there. Essentially, in 2015, the delegate body passed a resolution called on the status of the membership guidelines. And in that resolution, it said that the Delegate Assembly will not entertain changes to the membership guidelines for the next 4 years. As we moved closer to the 2019 Delegate Assembly, the Executive Board staff were made aware that there were many in the church at various levels who were expecting the delegates to discern questions related to the membership guidelines at the 2019 Assembly. Of course, at that point, there was no plan to address the membership guidelines because we had almost a complete changeover in staff, including the hiring of a new executive director, Glen Guyton, who started in 2018. But in response to that expectation, it was decided that the Constituency Leadership Council would begin to process the question of how the church should best respond to the membership guidelines. Again, this is going to be about a 30,000-foot view, not a lot of detail. Almost everything I talk about is present in different press releases, board minutes, and things like that that are made public following the meetings I'm talking about. But essentially in 2019, February 28th through March 2nd, the CLC met in Heston, Kansas, and they were given one question, and that is, what is the best way for Mennonite Church USA to discern the future of the membership guidelines? They spent a number of days working with that through what we call the 6 Thinking Hats process, and that yielded 5 different recommendations or comments that they passed on as feedback to the executive board. So then in March 26th of that same year, when the executive board met, they received that feedback and discerned how to best move forward. At that point, the executive board empowered myself and Iris Daly and Hartshorn to engage with a process consultant to come up with what would be a 2-year discernment process. And the plan at that point, or the intention at that point, was to announce that process at the 2019 Assembly in Kansas City. As part of that design process, we did craft a draft process, and we solicited feedback from Mennonite Church USA conference ministers, as well as representatives from Pink Menno, Brethren Mennonite Council, and Inclusive Mennonite pastors. The feedback caused us to pause with that process and to take a step back because we got feedback that indicated we might not be going down the right road. So we paused and began to reconsider that process. So that feedback, the questions raised by that feedback led the executive board to ask 2 questions of the delegate body in 2019. So when we did meet in Kansas City, there were 2 questions about the membership guidelines that the delegate body considered. The first question was, it was a statement that people were asked to agree or disagree with, and it said a 2-year biblical discernment process culminating in a delegate decision on the status of the membership guidelines in 2021 is important to my constituents. 69% of delegates agreed and strongly agreed with that statement. 31% disagreed or strongly disagreed with that statement. So do we want some process that leads to a delegate decision on the status of the guidelines? The second question or second statement was, my constituents will give time and energy to a biblical discernment process that focuses on the status of the membership guidelines. And this was interesting. 43% agreed with that their constituents would give time. 57 agreed or disagreed or strongly disagreed with that statement, indicating that they did not know how much time or energy that their constituents would want to give to that kind of process. And then we got literally 17 pages, single line, 17 pages of comments from the delegates, which we used to help us discern what we were saying, what was being said through those responses. The feedback from the delegate session then, we're still in 2019, was processed by the executive board in their September 5th through 7th meeting in Dallas, Texas. At that time, the staff recommended the formation of an advisory group to explore the history of the guidelines, the current reality within MCUSA, and the feedback from the delegate body for the purpose of advising the executive board. The board at that time supported that recommendation and said that we basically commissioned this advisory group of up to 23 people to give some options and feedback, and first to make some suggestions on the process. The board approved the names of the participants in that process in order to ensure the balance of gender, ethnicity, age, race, sexual orientation, theology, and then stipulated that a majority of members be from Mennonite Church USA. That advisory group was formed and met on November 15th through the 17th in Chicago, Illinois. information about that group. We try to be very transparent about that group and their process. The names of the group and all of that stuff was in public. It was in MCUSA Press, so you can still go back and look at that if you didn't look at that at that time. But they met during that time. They did their work. The results of that work was an advisory group report that was submitted to the executive board for consideration in their January 2020 meeting. Per the agreement, the board also made that report public so that the whole church could see the work of the advisory group and what they were recommending following that January meeting. In January, then the 17th, 18th, the executive board met in Kansas City. The executive board had a broad discussion about the report, but did not specifically process the content of the report due to a significant number of board members that were absent for various reasons. And there was also a press release following that. But the plan was to dive into that further at the next executive board meeting. Of course, now we're talking January of 2020. The next executive board meeting was scheduled for April of 2020, and that meeting was canceled due to COVID-19 and the pandemic. At that point, the executive board did do a brief check-in in March, but did no business. We were all doing our best to try to respond to the challenges now facing the church and different conferences and how to provide resources for that. And so our attention was obviously diverted from the process we had planned to the realities of what was happening. As we move further into 2020, of course, if you remember a year ago, we didn't know how long it would last, how long this might disrupt the life of the church. And yet here we are still meeting virtually in all of our meetings. But as we move further into 2020, it became apparent that we would not be able to follow the process we had in mind when we formed the advisory group. And so in 2020, midway through, probably about midsummer, the staff, myself and other staff created a proposal that we called a way forward for MCUSA, which was intended to be an alternative approach perhaps to the membership guidelines and resolving some of the issues based on the feedback we'd gotten up to that point. We got feedback from conference ministers and also at that point from representatives from Pink Meadow BMC and Inclusive Mennonite pastors to this first draft. And that draft then went to the executive committee, not the board, but the executive committee of Mennonite Church USA. And they utilized that Facebook and also, that feedback and also their own resources to reshape the draft. And then the executive committee vetted that draft with a focus group that they had assembled for that purpose. The results of that process. So I guess the picture we're getting is that this wasn't just, we didn't just create this in a week or two. This is an ongoing process that began way back in 2019 and it's led us to where we are. And so the results of that process of reshaping that second draft, that was discerned by the executive board in September 10th through 12th on a 2020 in a Zoom call. One recommendation that came out of all of that was a recommendation to move forward a resolution to retire the membership guidelines of Mennonite Church USA. There was also some information about clarity on credentialing and also potential review, potential changes to the bylaws in the event that the membership guidelines were retired. At that point in September, the EB decided to move the proposal to retire the guidelines to the Constituency Leadership Council for feedback. And most recently, the CLC, the Constituency Leadership Council, provided that feedback to the executive board through their October 16th and 17th meeting. So that was the most recent CLC meeting. They received, the title of the document they were looking at was entitled The Role of the Membership Guidelines and Clarification of Mennonite Church USA Polity. And there was really two recommendations that they were asked to give feedback on. One was a recommendation to bring a resolution to retire the guidelines to the 2021 Delegate Assembly. And the other one was to amend MCUSA bylaws and a shared understanding of ministerial leadership in order to reflect in the event that happened. The first recommendation to retire the guidelines received an 80% agree or strongly agree from the Constituency Leadership Council. If you're not familiar with that group, it is essentially 3 representatives from every area conference of Mennonite Church USA, representatives from constituency groups within Mennonite Church USA. So 80% agreed or strongly agreed with that recommendation. That feedback then was taken back to the executive board, and they had the resolutions committee draft a resolution to retire the membership guidelines. That process of drafting that resolution is still in process. So that final resolution has not been determined. At this point, the resolutions committee has approved a version of the membership guidelines resolution for feedback for the constituency leadership council. This is where maybe it gets a little confusing, but in March, the constituency leadership council will actually discern that resolution and give feedback to the executive board. The executive board will get that feedback at their April meeting, and at that point make a final determination on the form of that guideline or that membership guidelines resolution. Following that, if that resolution is approved and they discern that they're going to continue to move that forward, it will be made public through the Mennonite Church website, along with all the other resolutions that the resolutions committee is working through, so that congregations and conferences will be able to see the text of that and be able to discern that with plenty of time before the delegate body gathers. As Glenn mentioned, at this time, that churchwide statement or that the membership guidelines resolution and other churchwide statement resolutions will not be considered until the delegate body is able to meet face to face, and at that time we don't know when that will be. So I know that's probably a lot, but that's a sense of the way that this has entered into the system, where the conversation came from, some various points of how it was discerned and where we're at currently with that recommendation. So one question that we did get as a pre-question is, will the executive board consider revisiting the decision not to discern that guideline in the virtual delegate assembly? What I would recommend in that is that whatever advice or feedback or information you want to provide that to your conference moderator, your conference or your conference minister, those that will basically represent your conference at CLC. And also you can send an email to the executive board of Mennonite Church USA. So those would be two ways that you can voice your opinion on that, or ask them to reconsider the change. So
all right, thank you, Michael, for that. We did have one question pop up in the chat. I know if you're watching on Facebook, you may not be able to see the question, but one question was, how do we submit names for the LDC positions that Iris mentioned? But we do have a nomination form on the Mennonite Church USA website, so you can go there. You could submit names for people, and please, provide contact information, what board you think they would best serve on. But we always are looking for good volunteers to serve in the church and help give direction and guidance to our agencies. Iris, I don't know if you want to say something else about that.
No, I'm just trying to find we have it on our delegate assembly resources. There's a bunch in there. So I was just trying to find if I can find the exact link. So as soon as I find it, I'll put it on there.
Okay. Well, thank you, Michael, for that rundown of what's going on with the membership guidelines. Make sure if people have questions, that's why we took the time to do this webinar. They can come back and watch this. We will have this on our Facebook page so they can get all of the information that they need. If you have questions, feel free to submit those in the question and answer box below. We want to make sure that you are informed. And remember that just because a resolution is presented to the delegate body doesn't mean that it's a done deal. We have many opportunities for feedback in the resolution process. Our congregations, any congregation can submit a resolution. So please, this is your church. I encourage you to be actively engaged, and send your delegates. That's your voice. Send your delegates, conference and congregational delegates. And so if you are strongly in favor of a resolution or strongly opposed to a resolution, you can come and vote and make sure your voice is heard at the appropriate time. Next, we're going to move on to the convention. One of my favorite topics is the convention. And so we've invited our special guest, Scott Hartman, here to talk about the convention, let you know what's going on. I know there are many questions and concerns, but Scott is going to answer a lot of the questions that you have right now. So take it away, Scott.
All right, thank you, Glenn. As Glenn mentioned earlier, we are still hoping and planning for a hybrid convention. Hopefully you are all aware of our theme of Bring the Peace that we are organizing convention around. And I thought I'd start out with a little bit of a description of what a hybrid convention actually looks like. And that is an event where we have in-person programming and virtual programming. By definition, that's what it is. Our virtual participants will register and then get access to the programming through an online platform that is specific for our event. The worship services that we have live in Cincinnati will be live streamed for the virtual audience. So we will all be able to watch the same worship service together. We're planning to have a set of virtual hosts that will start the time of worship on the virtual platform, kind of welcome people, interact with the virtual participants, and then we will flip into the live stream from the worship service in Cincinnati. The plan is that we will record these worship services and upload them to the virtual platform so you can watch them later in case you couldn't join the live stream, or you may want to just watch them a second time because they're going to be so awesome. We all know we've gotten feedback that convention worship is one of the highlights of convention. And so, yeah, we want to make sure that's available for you all to watch. Seminars are going to be a little bit different than worship. We are going to have one set of seminars for those in Cincinnati, and we're going to have another set of seminars for our virtual participants. The seminars will be unique for each audience. Yeah, we're not going to kind of repeat anything. And one of the questions somebody asked was how long the content will be available on the virtual platform. And at this point, we're planning on keeping the virtual platform live for at least a month following convention. So if you don't get a chance to watch worship at the exact moment it's live, or you miss a seminar, they will be available on that platform for the month following convention. The other fun feature that the platform provides us is a virtual exhibit hall where organizations will be allowed to set up a page with resources and videos and an opportunity to interact with an agency representative for everybody attending the virtual event. We're looking at ways, we just signed a contract for the virtual platform, so we're now exploring ways that we can do networking in the virtual platform. We know how everybody likes their hallway conversations at convention, and so we're looking at ways to allow that to happen in the virtual platform, and we'll have some more information coming soon on that. We are also going to provide some interactive fun in the evenings on the virtual platform. So stay tuned for some of that. We already know we're going to do an evening of trivia on late night Thursday evening. So you're going to want to join that. One question that I've been asked is, if I attend in person, can I get access to the virtual platform? We are going to have a very minimal additional fee that will get you access to the virtual programming if you attend in person, knowing that people like to watch the worship services again. The other thing that's kind of exciting is that everybody, whether you attend in person or in the virtual platform, is going to get the same t-shirt. I know how I love seeing the convention t-shirts around town, around different pictures that people post. And so I think it'll be another way for us all to feel like we're all part of the same convention. If you watch our next newsletter, we're going to have more information kind of about the similarities and the differences between the two experiences. Now, I'm going to go on here a little bit. As Glenn talked about before, we are monitoring all the regulations for meetings in Ohio and Cincinnati. And I've been in conversation in the last week with both my Convention and Visitors Bureau contact, as well as my contact at the Convention Center. The Convention Center has a real thorough reopening plan that they had to submit in order to be able to host events. They have actually hosted a couple smaller events. I think they had a dance competition last weekend in their facility. And their reopening plan was reviewed by the health department, and it received like their gold standard. They said that it is super thorough. And so as we think about gathering, we are going to, well, basically we have to follow their reopening plan, their guidance, their guidelines, their restrictions. And the center has been pretty strict in enforcing it. Their health department has been known to show up and kind of see what's going on in the convention center. And so they want to make sure they follow their guidelines so they can continue to host events as we go. Right now, Ohio has a gathering limit of 300 people. We hope this will increase as time goes on, more people get the vaccine. We see some improvements in the positivity rate, those kind of things. But right now, Ohio has limited the gatherings to 300 based on the capacity limits that we are kind of anticipating, and assuming we will still need to be observing social distancing practices by the time July rolls around. We are going to have to limit the number of attendees that we can actually have in Cincinnati. I see no scenario where we're going to be able to have 2,500 people in Cincinnati like we had in Kansas City in 2019. So we're going to limit the number of people. That exact number has not been determined yet. We're kind of, again, waiting on the numbers that Ohio may adjust to. We're saying right now it's not going to exceed 1,000. I just don't see Ohio opening up their restrictions enough that we will go to more than 1,000 people. So we will try and keep you as updated as we can. Based on the reduced numbers of participants and the fact that we still want to provide a good experience in person and in the virtual experience, we've adjusted a couple pieces of our programming. One of the adjustments is that we are not going to offer servant projects this time. We feel like it just cuts out one more potential exposure point for our attendees. We're not as out interacting with the community if we don't do servant projects. It's something we're going to bring back next time. It's not something that it was not a decision we made lightly. The other decision that was actually a lot more conversation and discernment went into it, but we are not going to provide programming specifically for children and junior youth. These ages are still welcome to register and attend. They will just stay with their guardians throughout the day. It was another one of those, difficult conversations, but one of those decisions we feel like we need to make based on what we're seeing. My plan is to share our specific convention set of protocols and set of expectations for those who attend in the next couple weeks. I realize that you all would like to know what those expectations are before you decide if you want to attend in person. And so we want to work with our Convention and Visitors Bureau people and work with our Convention Center people to make sure we have a good, reasonable set of standards and protocols and expectations that match what the Convention Center is telling us we need to do, what the city of Cincinnati is telling us what we need to do, and what we as convention planning staff and Mennonite Church USA feel like we need to do. So watch for those in the next couple of weeks. We're going to follow national guidance, local guidance for large group gatherings. The CDC has some release information on that we're going to include. The nice thing is we have pushed registration opening back to April 6th. So you don't need to rush to register quite yet. I want to get these protocols and expectations out before registration opens. We're hoping before April to have a more definitive, yes, we're still good with meeting in person, or it doesn't look like Ohio is going to open up enough that we can meet in person. So kind of stay tuned, watch our convention newsletter, watch social media. We will keep you updated as quickly as we can.
Hey, Scott, we have a couple of questions I thought you might want to jump in and answer.
Oh, sure.
It seems like you are the popular person on this this webinar. But one question is can you explain the rationale for in-person and virtual seminars? Why are we having both?
Sure. Yeah. With technology, we decided it was going to be much easier if our virtual seminars are recorded ahead of time and then played in the virtual platform. And the presenter will be then able to engage in engage with the people watching that virtual seminar. It felt technology can be fickle, and so we have decided it just does not make sense to try and do live seminars shared between the two audiences. And to me, this is one of our value-added features with the virtual platform. If you come to convention expecting good seminars in person, I want to provide good seminars for the virtual participants. And we have worked hard to think through, what are the topics that both in-person and virtual participants are going to want to see addressed in the seminars.
Scott, another question from our I guess our thrifty Mennonite constituency is, can our register just pay one registration fee and let everyone in the church basically watch the worship services?
Sure. Our expectation is that everybody who attends convention, whether in person or a virtual, would register for the event. There are costs involved in the virtual convention, just like there are costs involved in the in-person convention. And so we are encouraging and asking that everybody who attends either virtual or in person registers for those events.
Yeah, Scott, I will say, I mean, I do think that's very important for us to think about. And I know that we're all in different places financially. The fee for the virtual convention is pretty low. It's $99. Is that right, Scott? It's $99.
Yes, $99 to join the virtual.
Right, and I know this isn't your problem, but you know, we have staff, several staff that work in the convention office. Those registration fees covers their employment. We have vendors that we have to pay contracts. We have to bring in equipment. So the convention isn't free. And I know that for some, $99 may seem like a lot, and we understand that. But that fee is also based on the number of participants that we have. We try to divide the cost, you know, amongst as many participants as we can. So when people don't pay, that means the people that do pay, the cost goes up for them. And so I understand that it may not be affordable for everyone. Another question in the chat was about racial equity. I mean, we have a lot of social economic diversity in the church, not just people of color, but people from all different racial identities have different socioeconomic levels that we need to pay attention to. And so we are sensitive to that. We have a number of resources that we do try to put out for people that are free, but convention is a very costly event. One of the great opportunities is that this year that there is that virtual component. And so you don't have to travel, you don't have to pay the hotel costs, and you can still participate for one of the lowest costs we've ever had to access information from the National Convention. Scott, do you have any idea who the worship speakers? Can you announce it?
I was just going to field that question.
All right.
I can tell you we are in the process of finalizing the worship speakers, but I can confirm that our own Glen Guyton will be our closing speaker at the end of convention. I have confirmation that Caleb and Leslie Francisco McClendon will be our opening speakers. And I've got several other speakers who are not quite confirmed. I can tell you one of the services will be a set of storytellers giving us real life stories and reflections from peacemaking in their lives. But that's who we have confirmed at this point. Um,
All right. And I know Scott will be meeting with the exhibitors at some point. So if you have specific questions about the exhibition hall, I think Scott's going to reach out and contact you in regards to that. Go ahead, Scott. You have something else you want to share?
yeah. The final thing I've talked to lots of people across the church over the last couple months, and I've heard concerns that we're still planning to try and meet in person, and excitement that we're still trying to meet in person. And I just want to say that I hope everybody hears me clearly, that if you really are not comfortable coming to Cincinnati to meet in person, I do not blame you at all. And I strongly encourage you to join the virtual experience. I think we've got some fun options within the virtual experience. I think it will be a good experience for you. It won't be the same experience that you would have in Cincinnati, but it will still be a good experience. If you watch our convention newsletter, we are going to throw out some ideas of how to make the virtual experience the best virtual experience you've ever had at a convention in one of the next convention newsletters. So watch that. But again, if you're not comfortable coming to Cincinnati, don't feel like you have to come. Join the virtual experience, figure out how to embrace that. And I think you're going to have a wonderful convention experience through that if you don't want to come to Cincinnati.
Yep, and we're making a number of adjustments, and we're watching this every day. We're literally every day. I talk to Scott, say, Scott, what's going on? What do you think about today? And so we want to make the best decision possible. There are many people that do want to meet in person because so many people have been isolated during this pandemic, and I know that many people want to come together to worship and fellowship, and we want to do that safely. I'm hopeful with the information that's coming out on the efficacy of the vaccines, as well as the administration rolling these things out more quickly. So those things are looking more positive for us to be able to gather together. Let's see. I think we have another questions. Will delegates attending only the delegate session need to register for the whole convention? Yes, delegates will need to register. The Delegate Assembly has always been a part of the convention, and so that is a portion of it. We want our delegates not only to come and do business, we want our delegates to come and worship and be a part of the broader experience that convention believes. And so the Delegate Assembly is part of that. If you want to think about it differently, people that aren't delegates don't get that bonus. So you get a bonus. If you are a delegate, you get a bonus. You get the Delegate Assembly and the convention. That's how you should really think about it. The people that attend the convention, they only get the convention part. So you get that extra time to come and help really decide the church, decide where we go as a church. And that's an important role. And I think that it's important that as we serve in that role, we also invest in that role. And you do what you feel is comfortable for you as a member of Mennonite Church USA. I believe in tithing. I tithe to my local congregation, San Antonio Mennonite Church, to my conference, or I break up my tithe. I don't give 10% to all those. My conference and also the denomination, because I'm a part of this organization. I believe in the mission, and I want to support it like many of you do. And so we do want to make these things affordable. Talk to your conferences, your congregations, if they are sending you to this event. Hopefully they can all help and practice mutual aid and help send you if you are a delegate on behalf of a conference or a congregation.
Glenn, I'm going to answer a couple of the other questions that have been thrown out here.
Oh, yeah, I see. Yeah. Let's go ahead and answer you. Scott, you can answer the ones you think applies to you.
Sure. Somebody asked about if the size is limited to 300 or 500, will we allocate a certain portion to youth or adults? It's something we've talked about. It's not something we've made any decisions on. We would love to have, yes, a broad representation from across the church in that 300 to 500. But yeah, stay tuned for kind of some information on that. there are convention scholarships available. We have the scholarship form is on our website. You can also email me if you have questions about that. Somebody also asked about cost sharing for attending virtually. What we have often done in the past is try to pair congregations within the conference with another congregation that might need some financial help. And so that's one way to work at it, is to, check with your conference office if there might be other congregations within your conference who could use some additional financial help to attend. If you email me, I can also work at ways from my end on helping that happen.
Scott, can you answer the question about the time difference? I know we have some West Coast people that are concerned about that.
Sure. The nice thing, well, yes, the way the seminars are going to work in the virtual platform is that we will have an airing date and time for them that will likely be middle of the afternoon Eastern time. So hopefully it's not too early on the West Coast. We will also be recording them so that they can be replayed at any given time. So if you miss Seminar A on Wednesday afternoon, you can watch it Wednesday evening after work. You can watch it Thursday morning. But yeah, they will be recorded and stored on the platform so that there is access to them at any given time.
One of the other questions is about what other items will be on the Delegate Assembly agenda. So we have the LDC appointments. We also have a number of bylaw changes, structural changes that we want to propose to the delegate body. Our bylaws are very important. So if you haven't read the bylaws of Mennonite Church USA and you are a delegate, I would encourage you to do that. That's how I go about my work. I follow the bylaws of Mennonite Church USA. That is my guiding document. And so it's important as we make changes to that guiding document that the delegates approve those and are fully aware of the roles and responsibilities of each part of the denomination. We mentioned that the Mennonite is no longer an entity of Mennonite Church USA. And so we will be, making that change in our bylaws as well. And so there will be some important work that we need to do that really affects how we operate as a denomination. And so, please, I would encourage you all to participate in that. And then we also have the transition of the moderator elect that also takes place during that time. Someone asked if the Delegate Assembly is scheduled for 2022, will you avoid meeting at the same time of Mennonite World Conference? Yes, we will avoid that. That is part of the decision process. We also want to try to hold that meeting at a time where we can get the most participation. So we have a couple other questions here.
Oh, yeah, Glenn, let me answer a couple of these questions about
Okay.
youth-specific plans.
Okay.
As we have with previous conventions, for both in person and in the virtual platform, we are planning youth-specific seminars. So I'm getting my tongue tied here. But yes, we're going to make sure that we have content specifically for youth in terms of seminars for both the virtual and in person. Worship will be, as we did in 2019, we are just going to have one worship service for everybody. So in person will be youth and adults together. In the virtual platform, it will be youth and adults together as well. We are working on a similar to what we did last convention, but we are working on a follow-up question and answer time with the morning worship speakers that's just for youth. We aren't sure what we're going to call it yet. We aren't sure exactly what format it's going to take, but we are working on that. Chris Cox was our host of that time last convention, and he is on board to host that again as we kind of delve a little deeper into the morning worship service message with the worship speaker.
All right. We had another question about youth and young adults serving as delegates. If you participated in the Delegate Assembly in 2019, one of the things that we did pass a new allocation for delegates is if you send a youth delegate, so that's a young person between the ages of 16 and 21, or including the ages of 16 to 21, you get an additional delegate. So you get your normal delegate allocation, plus you can have an additional delegate in that age range of 16 to 21. You can have all of your delegates in that age range, but you get an additional delegate. And then the conferences also get an additional delegate. So that's in the bylaws. Read up on that. I mean, it is based on your church population, how many delegates that you do get, but you get an additional delegate. Oh, I'm sorry. And the conferences get two youth delegates. So congregations get one delegate, and then the conferences can have two additional delegates, youth delegates.
And we are working on something, well, we're planning to do the Step Up program again for the youth delegates. So that information will be available as they register. We will send them information about that. But the coordinators of that program last convention are going to do it again this convention. I just had confirmation earlier or the end of last week that they are still planning to do that, even with the delegate session moving virtual. They're going to develop some resources for the youth delegates to help them understand the delegate process a little more. It actually might be good resources for even older people who are serving as delegates, because sometimes we don't all understand quite what the delegate process does.
Right. Also, Scott, I don't know if you answered this question about how many seminars can you watch? It says, does that mean we can watch as many seminars as we want at later times, or can we only watch specific ones?
I was going to say, this is another bonus of the virtual platform, is they will all be saved in the virtual platform. You can watch every single one of them if you want to take the time to watch them. So yeah, again, if you miss seminar A at the time it's shown on the virtual platform, it will still be there later for you to watch.
All right. Doesn't look like we have any more questions. I will give before I give the panelists the last word, I will say, make sure you subscribe to Piecemeal. That is your best, most up-to-date source for information in Mennonite Church USA. That is the official channel, that department run by Will Leveast and our wonderful communications team. They put out a lot of information. Sign up for Piecemeal, subscribe to it so you'll know what's going on. You'll know when wonderful webinars like this take place and other work that we're doing. And that is the official word for Mennonite Church USA. When you read it in Piecemeal, things from me. I mean, we have opinion pieces in that, so let me be careful, because you say, well, I read it in Piecemeal, this is the policy. No, if it's quoting me, it's a policy, or our staff, that's our official policy, our news releases. With that, we still do have opinion pieces from around the church, but read Piecemeal, stay up to date on what's going on. And so I'll start. Michael, do you have any parting closing words? You're on mute. No? He says.
And no, I don't have any parting words.
Okay. And Iris.
Just to let everyone know that I did put the link into the chat, and also I put the link into the part that had questions. You just get on that link and you can nominate people. It's a form you fill out online. So it's there.
Scott?
My parting comment is going to be that you should all subscribe to the convention newsletter. It's the easiest place to find the best information about convention.
All right. Make sure you read our documents, read the bylaws of Mennonite Church USA so that you will understand how our system functions. Read the developing resolutions policy so that you'll know how resolutions are birthed in our denomination. The executive board isn't the only place where resolutions can be generated. They are generated, in a number of different places in our body, and also you will have time to give input into these resolutions. We'll post them once they go through our process with CLC. We'll post them. You can give feedback, and you still, as a delegate, you can vote. You can vote yes, no, or you don't have to vote at all. But I encourage you to take advantage of your membership in Mennonite Church USA. This is one of the few times that you get to directly tell the denomination what you want, and they carry some weight. You tell me what you want all the time. I get emails all the time of what you think I should and shouldn't do, but you actually get a vote that counts with the Delegate Assembly. So don't take that lightly. But thank you all so much. I'm so happy for those of you that joined, because you had questions. You took your time out of your busy schedule to come and be informed and to ask questions. So I appreciate you so much. Thank you for your support of Mennonite Church USA, and you all have a safe, wonderful evening. Thank you so much.